Hey, I'm excited about today. We're starting this new series called Facetime, and we did this series last year, if you remember, and we brought in, you might say, a couple of famous people, notable people, and you know what? At the end of that series, just to be honest with you, I said to Lene, I said, there just wasn't enough Jesus in that series. It was more about the people, and there just wasn't enough Jesus. And I want this series, I want us to do this series, I want Jesus to be the star of the show and not bring in somebody else to take the limelight. So as I was thinking about the people, we came up with the three people, and I'm very excited about our first guest. I've known this guy for a long time. He's got an amazing testimony. And so I want to ask you to help me and welcome Paul Jaggers to the stage today. So when was that? When was it that we first met?
I think it was April of 2008.
2008, 11 years ago.
Yep.
All right. And when I first met Paul, this didn't happen rarely happens, but when I first met Paul, he came in with his guitar and he sat down and he sang. And it was like a folksy little song that you sang for me, and you sang it very softly. I had no idea that you had this huge, booming voice that you have. And so as I was sitting there listening to you, God spoke to me and he said, this man is a worship leader. And so I asked you that question that day. I said, Paul, have you ever thought about leading worship? And you said, absolutely not. That's not something I would ever do. And it took a little while for things to progress, but you ended up being the main one of the main worship leaders at the church where we came from, and it's been a large part of your life, but it didn't come.
It got me through probably some of the most difficult years of my life. Yeah. I just learned to play guitar like a year and a half before I came in audition, so I was scared to death. I barely know how to play anything.
Yeah. But you began to tell me your story then, and I just would like for you to start kind of at that point and just tell us what happened in the beginning, and just how the trouble that you had in your life. And Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble, and you will, won't you?
Yeah.
And could you just start there and tell us how that started?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in church. My dad was a preacher, and so I was a PK. And I remember distinctly when I was about 17, 18 years old thinking, nothing's really happened in my life. I mean, life's good, church, it's just part of it. Kind of took things for granted. And that all changed a few years later. Got married and made some bad mistakes and found myself face to face with, how did I get here? How did this happen to me? How did I do these things that have caused this much pain in my life? And my marriage to my first wife was pretty much dysfunctional throughout. I didn't know that at the time, but looking back, I can see all the red flags. Hindsight's 20/20. And she and I were married and divorced 3 times. And you might say, well, why in the world would you marry somebody the second and definitely the third? What's going on? Well, I, again, was brought up in church and very much in a legalistic type of environment. And I believed, what God said about till death do you part. And I had made mistakes. I was operating out of guilt and wanted to do the best I could. And so we would get divorced, and then we got remarried again, and got divorced again, and the second divorce was horrible. In 2005, I was accused of things pertaining to my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's not here today, she's 24, that would have put me in jail for the rest of my life if it had been true. And to experience that brought me face to face with the truth. And the truth was the only thing that was going to save me. I had many times that I was angry beyond belief. God would let me play out my anger. He would let me go through the pain and the hatred and the discomfort and say, okay, now what are you going to do? And his voice was always still. It was always calm. It was never the legalistic, you're going to hell attitude that if you don't do this, this is going to happen to you. It was very peaceful. It was like, okay, Paul, I know where you are. Now what are you going to do? And what that did was drove me to get my Bible out and to read it in a way that I'd never read it before. And at that point, I had a decision to make of what did I want my life to look like.
Hey, because Paul, during that time, we talked the other day about this part. Can you just explain the level of emotion and what type of emotions you were going through at that time to be accused of something that you knew you were not guilty of? And can you just explain what that felt like?
Just to cut to the chase, to be accused of molesting your daughter completely throws the court system against you, and you're guilty until proven innocent. My daughters were both taken away from me. I had no communication. I had no contact for a year. Nothing. If I made any contact, all she had to do was make a phone call, and I would be arrested. And that happened to me prior to her doing this. She had done it on a previous occasion. I was arrested in my own driveway, and I did absolutely nothing. And I remember riding in the back of a police car and asking the officer, how does this happen? And he said, sir, you have no idea. He said, all they have to do is claim, and you are guilty. And so at that point, I found myself at the lowest place in my life. And I've got to interject some things that happened right there. I went to jail. I'm in my bunk. I called my boss at work. I worked at Daikin America Chemical Plant. And I said, Jeff, I'm in jail. I need you to come get me out. I got to be at work tomorrow. He said, yeah, man, I'll be right up there. Well, I'm laying in my bunk, and I'm talking to this gentleman that's also in there, and he's telling me his troubles. I'm telling him what's happening to me. I was like, yeah, man, it's crazy. I don't know what's going on. So the officer comes, and he's, Jaggers, it's time to go. I'm like, all right, man, take care, Marcus. His name was Marcus. He's like, all right, man, you too. I get down off my bunk. I walked in. He's like, hey, come here. He follows me. He said, dude, we used to work together back at National Packaging back like 8 years ago. I was like, you got to be kidding me. God just brought somebody from my past just to throw a little glimmer of hope that it's bad, but it's not that bad. I wasn't dead. And so at that time, Madison, who's 15 now, was about 12 months old, 13 months old, something like that. She had forgotten who I was when I saw her again. She just thought I was a man. She would say, that's a man. That's a man. And to know that these things were happening to me and I had not done anything, and to see the power of the enemy trying to destroy me through my then wife was very humbling to me, and made me rely on really putting my trust and my faith in God. We got back together, and you might say, how in the world, are you an idiot? No, I'm not. Come to find out, after we got back together that time, I told her, I said, you know what? We can really reach a lot of people and help people. We just got to tell the truth. You know, I forgive you for lying. I forgive you for, she's like, there's no way I'm going to admit that. We've got to move. And we moved from Decatur to Hampton Cove. That's how I ended up in Hampton Cove. And I thought, there's no way we can live in Hampton Cove. I'm not going to, that's an hour away from my work, but I'll do whatever I can to make it work. And that's how I moved to Hampton Cove. Cove Church was right down the street. I said, I'm going to try it out. I'm going to check it out. It's a Methodist church. My dad grew up as a Methodist, and I'm going to go see what it's about. Saw the band, and I was hooked. I was like, this is where I want to be. And things were still rocky. They were rocky, you know, the whole time. But I remember sitting on the back pew of Cove, and God saying, are you going to fill out that connection card and help with the band or not? Because the funny thing that happened when I got accused the first time back in 2005 is I went and moved in with a friend of mine that I worked with. He let me live there. I lived there for a year. Experienced crazy, dramatic things that were going on because of the whole situation. Make a long story short, when we got to court back in 2005, I won everything. The judge said, you get everything, and you need to take those girls to counseling to see what damage you've done. And in that year, I was like, what am I going to do? I go to work 12 hours a day. I come home, what am I going to do? Well, my dad played guitar, and I'd always wanted to learn to play guitar. I played drums and keyboard, so I want to learn to play guitar. I said, Dad, can I borrow a guitar? He said, yeah, you can use this one. It's a little bit hard for me to chord, you know, because my fingers are too big. So I got it, and I learned to play guitar in 2005. From 2005 to 2006, I would come home, and I would play every single day, and that helped me calm what was going through my head. And I learned to play guitar, and never crossed my mind that it would be used later. But what it did teach me was to take action. And when I experienced the extreme actions that had taken place that completely altered my life. I mean, when you go to jail and you've never been in jail and you've never done anything your life to go to jail, and you go to jail, that's an eye-opener. And if you don't wake up from that and you don't choose to do the right thing, you're going the opposite direction. We have to choose what's positive, and we have to choose what is right, because if we don't, we will by default go negative. We will by default destroy ourselves. We will by default backslide.
Tell about that struggle between the emotions of what you would naturally want to do and choosing the right thing, the next right thing.
Yeah, I can't really put into accurate words the amount of anger. Well, yeah, I can. I wanted to kill people, period. I wanted them to be off the face of the earth because they had lied about me and they had done things that were creating things in my life that were horrendous. My name had been slammed. My name had been tarnished. I was being made fun of. And I was 35 years old. It's not like I was 20. This is when I was 35 years old. And God said, okay, well, if you do that, then what's going to happen? I'm like, well, I'm either going to die or I'm going to go to jail. He said, yeah. Well, what's that going to look like? That's not going to be good. I wouldn't do well in prison. And so he said, you got a choice, Paul. You need to decide who you're going to be. Not just, oh, I'm a Christian. Oh, I'm going to go to church. Oh, everything's just fine and dandy and, you know, it's all a bed of roses. You got to decide right now what you're going to do. And I would read my Bible, and he would remind me that he instructs us, husbands, love your wives like Christ loved the church and gave himself for it, period. It didn't say if they love you back. It didn't say if they do good things for you. It didn't say if they're always nice to you. It didn't say if everything is just great all the time. It says love your enemies. It says pray for your enemies. Do good to those that despitefully use you. All the things that my wife at the time was doing to me. And he said, Paul, are you doing everything you can do? I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You expect me, after all of this, you expect me to do this? He said, yeah. That's what Jesus did. And I was like, whoa. It brought me to my knees. Because that's what they did to Jesus. They accused him, and I'm nowhere near Jesus, trust me. He did no wrong, yet he loved them. And he said, Paul, you've learned all these lessons all your life. Are you going to put them into play? Are you going to put them into practice? Or are you fake? Is this the point where your life is going to take a turn and you're going to be that story that people go, wow, what happened to him? I'm like, no. What do I want my life to look like? I got involved in personal development companies and personal development books and all that stuff. And I was like, this is all stuff I've read in the Bible. They're just putting a different spin on it and taking Jesus out of it. It's the same thing. It's the same concept. Tony Robbins, all those things, it's the same stuff. He said, yeah. So what are you going to do? I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to love my wife. He said, yeah, try that. And let me take care of the rest. Because there's also a verse in the Bible that says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. I said, okay, God, I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do. And if the situation arose, I want to give you an example. We split up for the third time, and God knew I didn't want a divorce. God knew I wanted things to work. I mean, who doesn't? Why would anybody want to live in such chaos the rest of their life? And I would do what I could to assist and try to get my wife at the time help. I would take her to the hospital because she had physical problems. She was a nurse and she had started self-medicating, had gotten on drugs that were not readily available. I remember getting packages from Mexico and other places. I'm like, what have you bought this time? I needed that money to pay the bills. Well, if you did this or you did that, we wouldn't have to pay it. I'm like, it's a no-win situation for me. But God said, yes, it is. You keep doing what I tell you to do, and I will see this through. And that takes humility, because all of us as human beings, I don't care what your personality is, I don't care how old you are, we bow up at that. We bow up at being humble when we are being wronged. And I did. I'd already proven my point years earlier. In 2005, now we're 2008, we moved over here to Hampton Cove, and we're going through the same cycle again. I'm like, what in the world is going on? We've been to counseling. We would go to counseling. Our counseling sessions consisted of, I'm a monster, she does nothing wrong. If I said anything, I got an earful in the car when we got out. We never moved forward. The counselor's just like, well, it seems like y'all need to, continue to come and pay me money. This is what I'm thinking in my head. And we'll see if this works. And I did that. And
I remember during this time, Paul would come and we would meet together and we'd talk a lot, either before or after practice or during the week sometime. And Paul would tell me what was actually going on in his life. And the thing that amazed me most about you, Paul, was your faith. I remember Paul telling me his situation, and I love Jesus, and I loved Paul, and I have faith, and I pray for people, and I was praying for Paul. But in my mind, I was thinking, there's no way you're ever going to get those kids back.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And Paul never wavered. I didn't tell you that at the time, of course, but he never wavered. And one thing that you told me that just absolutely amazed me is you said that you were reading parenting books. You were preparing for when you were going to get your kids back. And to me, that was amazing faith. Can you tell me what that was like?
When I finally understood that it was not about what other people did, but what I did, I got into the personal development industry, and again, I was like, this is stuff in the Bible, and I read my Bible, but I read it in a different way. I was like, oh, God loves me. He's not telling me what I can't do. He's telling me what I can do. And the choice is, what do I want to do? What do I want my life to look like? And yeah, my situation right now is terrible, but what do I want it to look like in the future? So yeah, I didn't have my kids, and it happened again when we moved over here. You remember? Yeah. I was on the worship team. And the funny thing is, I auditioned in April. You didn't call me to sing until November, the very day that I was having to move out of the house that we were living in, and a financial catastrophe happened. I lost all of my life savings in 2008 due to the housing crisis and had lost everything. And Rob called me and said, hey man, I'd like for you to sing American Dream by Casting Crowns this Sunday. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I'm having to move out of the house because I'm broke.
You were living that song.
I was living the song, and I had to sing and listen to that song all week and cry my eyes out probably 50 times before I could sing it without crying. And I remember saying, God, if I can't sing this, it's going to be useless. He's like, you just keep practicing, keep practicing. And that was the beginning of God really saying, I've got a different purpose for you. You keep doing what you're supposed to do, and I'm going to bless you. I keep my promises. And that's the one thing I want to emphasize. God keeps his promises. God loves you. I don't care where you've been or what you've done, God loves you. And he's got a purpose for you to bring glory to himself. Not because he's prideful, not because he's boastful, but that's the way it works. He created us. He made us in his image. And he's got a purpose that he wants to carry out as long as we say, okay, what do I need to do?
Just keep saying yes.
Keep saying yes, and keep doing what he tells you to do in the midst of the turmoil. I mean, come on, guys. There's a verse in the Bible that says, I prepare a place for you in the presence of your enemies. Think about that. I've seen some illustrations where they bring a table out, and it's like, here's your enemies sitting around you, and you're here, and God's here, and God's bringing food out for you. It's not going to be easy. It's not supposed to be easy. This is earth. If this was heaven, what's the point? We wouldn't have to work through anything. We wouldn't have to do anything that would prove to the world that we're different. The only way that we can prove to the world that we are different is through our actions, not through our speech. If our speech and our actions don't line up, then we're fake, and we're nothing more than liars. And that's what God very calmly and peacefully pointed out to me. He said, Paul, are you a liar, or are you really going to follow me? And I decided to follow him.
And I was a witness to all of this. I was a witness to see how you faithfully followed Jesus every day, every week after week. And it was just absolutely amazing, the strength that God gave you, the strength, the determination, the humility.
And what
to
happened?
turn the other cheek, because that's also
Yeah.
in the scripture.
What happened was, since I had experienced that in 2005 in Decatur, I knew what to look for. I became aware of the red flags. I became aware of, okay, here's the cycle coming again. And when I lost all the money, that's a trigger. I'm like, okay, I'm broke. This is not good. Here we go again. And sure enough, my wife at the time made a comment in November. We had moved out of that house. We moved from a 3,000 square foot house to a one-bedroom apartment in Hampton Falls Apartments. Put our stuff in storage, and 4 people in a one-bedroom apartment. I was humiliated. I still worked, but I was humiliated. The people that we had rented the house from, we were planning on buying that from them. They went to Cove, some of the dearest friends I have now. And my wife couldn't stay there. She's like, I can't stay there. I'm moving back to the townhouse where we'd originally moved when we moved to Hampton Cove. And she did, and she made a comment that triggered that she was going to accuse me again. And she said, you better go, you probably need to go to counseling. I went immediately to counseling, and the counselor, I said, look, let me back up. Technology is amazing. iPhones came out in 2006, 2007, something like that. Well, I was like, I got to get one of those. Those are awesome. Well, they allow you to keep all your texts. But that gave me a record that I could show people, look, this is what goes on. This is what's being said. What in the world am I supposed to do? And she immediately recognized, she said, your wife's got borderline personality disorder. You need this book, you need this book, and you need this book, because it's coming again, and this time it's going to be bad. If she doesn't get some help, she's going to die. She was 35 years old. So I get every borderline personality book I can find and read it, and I'm like, oh my gosh. God was like, there's the truth. I get chills right now thinking about it, because God just gave me a peace that said, you keep doing the right thing and I will take care of you. Well, when I found that out, I implored her, look, you've got to get some help, because her health was really getting out of control at that time. And my counselors, my personal counselor told me to go make an appointment with the court-appointed counselor and go ahead and talk to him, because I would be in court again. I was like, what do you, she said, do it. And I did. He agreed. He said, you're headed down the same road again. If she doesn't get some help, she's going to die. And they both said, you have to file for divorce to force her into counseling for the sake of your kids. I'm like, I don't want a divorce. I want this to work out. They said, listen, Mr. Jaggers, this is your only option. So in April of 2009, I filed for divorce from my wife to force her into counseling. Now, I'd been on the worship team. I'd sang American Dream. I may have sang another song or two in the meantime. I walk into the lawyer's office. First, I called my lawyer in Decatur. I said, Alan, I'm going through it again. He said, doesn't surprise me. He was just as nice as he could be. He said, it doesn't surprise me. I was like, who can I use? He's like, well, try this lady, and then try this one, and try this one. Well, I tried the other two and couldn't get a hold of them, and I called the third one. It was Brian Clark. I didn't know Brian Clark. I had never heard of him before in my life. I go into his office, filling out the paperwork. I'm stressed. I'm like, here we go again. My life is falling apart. I've been trying to do the right thing. It's not working. I'm literally on the verge of just losing it. Brian walks in. Hey, man, how's it going? I was like, good. It's like, oh, when are you going to sing? Called off some song. I was like, what? He said, when are you going to sing this song? Like, what are you talking about? He said, dude, I see you at Cove Church. I go to Cove. I've heard you sing many times. I was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. God was just saying, it's going to be okay. I'm bringing people into your life at the time that you need them. So I filed for divorce to force her into counseling. lost my kids again. She filed another PFA. I said she's going to file a PFA and accuse me of all these things. It happened again. I lost my kids again. This was the second time. Not only did I lose my kids, she ended up moving back to Hampton Falls because she couldn't afford to live in the townhouse that we lived in. Her dad ended up paying for that for her. She had a car that I paid for. And that was another thing. Let me go back to that. 2005. When you get kicked out of your house and you get kicked out and you've been accused of doing things, but you still got to pay all the bills, and you get tormented and you get taunted that you're going to get taken completely out of your kids' lives, but you're still going to pay thousands of dollars and there won't be a bleep thing you can do about it. That tests your faith. That tests your ability to say, okay, God, I'm going to give it to you, because if I don't, I'm going to lose it. So I did. Fast forward back to 2008, we go through the same thing. I lose my kids again. It doesn't surprise me this time, though, because I know now, borderline personality disorder. I've read all the books. I'm like, no wonder. No wonder we've gone through this cycle and we've done this more than one time. No wonder it's come back around. We went to counseling a couple of times, and this time it was different. She was afraid. You could see that it was all starting to crumble because I was just telling it like it was. She vandalized my own car, cut the battery cables, ripped up all the seats, and said I did it in the counseling office. Did thousands of dollars worth of damage. And I was very angry. I said, give me the key so I can get the car fixed. So again, all the lies just come trickling in. But this time, I know I've just got to do the right thing. What's the next step? Well, the next step in this situation is get the car key. Yeah, she's done it, but this is where we are. And I think I was still singing. I would come. My outlet was church. I remember Rob calling me one weeknight. He said, hey, man, I was just wondering if you could do something for work, for a song. I was like, yeah, man, no problem. And he said, well, what are you doing? I was like, I'm sitting in the parking lot at Target. He's like, well, what are you doing that for? I was like, well, just about to go in and walk around, just see if there's anything I might want to buy. He's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, and it's not easy to just tell somebody that you know on that level. We knew each other a lot, but we didn't know anybody. We didn't know each other deep yet, I said, well, I lost my kids again, and instead of just going home and getting depressed, sometimes I just go to the mall. Or I go to a shopping center just to be around people so that I don't let my mind take over and fall into a depression, because I want to do the right thing. He said, dude, come to my small group. I was like, your small group's married people. My marriage is completely a wreck.
That's true. And you told me that you were so lonely that you went to the mall to walk around. It ripped my heart out. And I said, our couples group is about to change. We're going to invite a single guy, and it's going to become a mixed group. And you came.
I did. And that's when you and I, you became an anchor for me. The outlet that music gave me. Number one, it showed me that was my passion. That was my true passion.
Yeah.
And so then I had the regrets of, man, why didn't I follow this when I was 18 years old or 15 years old,
By this time, your hair was about halfway down your back. He didn't say this, but the first time I met him, his hair was short like it is now. And then when you had financial trouble, I never knew this. I thought you were just trying to be Fabio or something. But
people would see my hair and like, man, you play music. I'm like, yeah, but my hair has nothing to do with that, really. If you knew my story, you would understand.
Tell him why.
Okay, I'll explain my hair. All right, so auditioned in 2008 in April. In May, I found out I lost all my money, literally a month later. literally a month later, I'd lost all my life savings that was bringing an income in that was allowing us to live in the house we were living in and was going to allow us to buy the house. It was gone, never to be seen again. And I started thinking, how can I save money? Well, move out of the house, number one. I can, do that, move into an apartment. And I never could get consistent haircuts. And I went in to get a haircut in July, and the lady gave me a haircut, and it was the weirdest, most awkward experience, and it was a bad haircut. And I said, you know what? I could buy cereal and milk for the amount of money that I paid for this. I'm just not going to get my haircut next month. And that turned into another month and another month. And I did not get my haircut again for 10 years.
You were the most realistic-looking Jesus guy I'd ever seen.
I had hair. My hair was halfway down my back.
Yeah.
And it stopped growing. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, well, if it starts falling out, I'll get it cut. But it's not falling out yet. And I'll just let it be long. And everybody's like, oh, your hair. I was like, you don't have a clue. It's hair. Who cares? My life is shambles.
This is true. The single women would come up after church sometimes to me, and they would say, who is that guy that was singing today with the long hair? And I would say, you're barking up the wrong tree.
You don't even want to go there. Move along.
This guy's not interested, I can tell you.
No. So that was the story of my hair. And it made me look at that even, because I remember saying, God, does it really matter if my hair is always short? He's like, no. And he would show me all these passages in the Bible, like, well, Samson's hair was long, and this guy's hair was long. And I was like, okay, that's just the world's superficial judgment. And so at that point, we went to, back to 2008, we went to counseling, or 2009 at this point. Went to counseling 2 or 3 times. She would miss most of the time. The last counseling visit that I saw her was the visit where I found out she had destroyed the car. And I knew it was because I could see it down the parking lot. I lived in this building, she lived in that building, and the car just sat there. I was like, what's going on with the car? It's never moved. Well, he cut the cables and he slashed the seats. And she also slashed the tires on my car that I was driving. I pulled out to go to church one Sunday morning, and 2 of my tires on the left side were flat with puncture holes in the side. So I experienced all kinds of craziness, but I knew where it was coming from. So I was like, okay, what's the next step? Okay, get my tires fixed. No big deal. And all along, God would bring people into my life. God would give me an opportunity to sing. God would give me an opportunity to play, because I had taken action before. If I had not taken action in 2005 when she had accused me of everything and not said, I'm going to learn to play guitar, I would have never been able to play guitar. Plain and simple. God does not wait for us to wait on him to tell us what to do. He wants us to take action in the midst of the chaos, because the chaos is coming. You may not be going through it now, but you're going to at some point, especially if you claim Jesus. If you claim Jesus, you claim the most detestable thing that Satan cannot stand. And if you're married, well, you're on a totally different playing field, because you create the perfect image of God. He brings the 2 of you together to create the perfect image of him. See, God is neither male or female. We can't comprehend that with our minds. And so I started listening to self-development and practicing this all the time. And fast forward a few months later, I get a call from my father-in-law. My wife had died. She had moved with them in Athens. And November 12th, 2009, he called me and said, well, if your marriage is legit, I need you to sign her over so I can have her buried. She died this morning at 3 o'clock. And
I remember that day.
Yep.
You called me.
Yep.
And even after all of the pain that you had gone through,
Yep.
you were a broken
Yep.
guy
Yep.
when that happened.
And then I had to fight. By this time, I had not seen my kids again this time for 9 months. I had to fight them another it was about a year and a half before I got my kids back. They were scared of me, angry, didn't want to see me. And I said, you're my kids. I'm going to, of course, fight to get you back. And I did. God has restored that. God restored the relationship with my in-laws after the truth came out. I said, look, this is the truth. This is what happened. This is really what went on. And then God saved the best for last. I went for 9 years alone. I remember turning 45, and 45 was a tough year for me. I'm 48 now, and 45 was just weird. I would go to church. I mean, at this time, I got my kids back. We're doing great. We're all, enjoying life, going on trips, and just living life. And I didn't think I'd ever meet anybody and be married again. And God had my dream girl, literally my dream girl, move in the apartments across the parking lot from me. And now she's sitting right here on the front row. Angie, that is everything I'd ever wanted in a wife, who loves me unconditionally, accepts my flaws, lifts me up, encourages me, the complete opposite of what I experienced before. And it was God saying, I told you, I keep my promises here. And the love that he showed me, and is still continuing to show me, blows my mind every day. We have our own, things that we have to work through as a married couple. I said, look, this is coming. Just warning you. And we do. But we have God and we have Christ at the center of our marriage, and that makes all the difference. So if you're single or you're married or you're a kid or you're grown, it doesn't matter. Decide what you want your life to look like. Don't just claim Jesus by mouth. Show it through your actions, because he will blow your mind with what he blesses you with. And it's up to you. He's not going to make you do it. That's one thing I learned. He's not going to force you to do it. He's going to let you experience enough pain to where you're going to do one thing or the other, but he will never force you to do anything. It's your choice.
What does it feel like today to have custody of your two girls and to have the relationship that you have with them and have a healthy marriage, and to look back on all that? How does it feel today?
It's almost like it didn't happen to me. It's almost like it's something I read somewhere, but it was me. And it really wasn't that long ago. But sometimes I wake up, it's like I've woken up from a dream, yet I'm still in the dream, and it's awesome now. And then something happens that is not good, and I'm like, no, it's still real life. Still got to work through those battles. Still got to choose the right thing. Still got to persevere, because this is earth. This is not heaven. Till the day I die, I have to choose to do the right thing. But I know from experience that God is in it, and God has got his hand in it, and God will see me through, and God will bless me beyond my wildest imagination if I do the next right thing.
The next right thing. That's what I was going to bring up. In our young men's group on Tuesday night, Robert, who is sitting back there somewhere, he started saying this thing, because we have these conversations every week, and he just started saying, you got to do the next right thing. What's the next right thing? The next right thing. And it's true. You have to do the next right thing in the hard times, but you have to do the next right thing when times are good also, don't you?
Yeah, it's an everyday thing. One of the personal development companies used to say, make it a great day. Don't just have a great day, make it a great day. And that really stuck with me. Okay, I've got to take action to make it a great day. I've got to go out of my way. I've got to do the right thing, but I've got to do that on purpose. You've got to live with purpose, and you have to live with intention, because if you don't, it's just our nature. We were born into sin. That's a given. We're born into it. Satan wants to destroy you. That's a given. Once you understand what you're battling, you know how to battle it. and you've got the power of the Holy Spirit and the power of what Jesus did on the cross and the power of God Almighty who created all of us and everything we see around us on your side. Saying, I got you.
What I have seen you do throughout this whole situation is over years, I have seen you tend to God's business, and that is making yourself available to lead worship and serve Him in that capacity, but also love your enemies, pray for those who use you, turn the other cheek, love others as you would have them love you, or do to others as you'd have them do to you, and love others as Jesus said, as I have loved you. Love each other as I have loved you. That was one of Jesus' last commandments. And I've seen you do that. And then what I've seen on the other side is God has taken care of your business. He is saying you have not pursued your own interests. That's the thing. That's the secret of Christianity. You don't pursue your own interests. You're not trying to gather things around you to make your life better. You are giving. You give, you give, you give, and God turns around and gives to you. And it's just been absolutely amazing, Paul, to see what God has done in your life. And I'm amazed, and I know that God looks at you and already is saying, well done, Paul Jaggers. Let's give Paul a hand. Thank you, Paul.